Today's topic, gateway game or gateway shame? Welcome to Table Scraps, short discussions about board, card, and tabletop gaming, submitted by the viewing audience and discussed with the viewing audience. Hey there everyone, hi, and welcome back to another episode of Table Scraps, the live streaming show where I, your host, Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise, will discuss a topic about table and board gaming with the live streaming YouTube audience. So, it's good to see you all, and as always, today's topic of discussion comes from that same live YouTube audience, and today's topic is thus. Lucas Morão says, why so many people, mainly reviewers, treat the board game hobby as a ladder, as you should go up from gateway games. I know gateway games are perceived as a way to get into the hobby, but every time I see a new family weight or lightweight game review, they always end up saying as a good game to start the gaming night or to start your collection or as a quote-unquote palate cleanser. If you say to me that you played Ticket to Ride, Stone Age, Splendor, or Takenoko, I'd say that you had an amazing game night. I like games that are more family weight, and it's perfect for the time that I have for the hobby. So I'll do it my own way, but I was really wondering, why do some people treat some games just as stepping stones? Why the push for the quote-unquote next step? As for everything in life, the purpose of the hobby is different for everyone. But when people say a game is, quote, a nice way to start in on the hobby, it kind of seems to lessen my taste. I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but I feel this way when watching reviews of this category of games. When I saw your question come in here, Lucas, I was really inspired because this is actually something that I have felt myself as well. So I thought it would make a great topic of discussion to see how your experience matches with my experience and matches with the people in the viewing audience. So let's start. Let's actually start by talking about this concept of gateway games. From my understanding, a gateway game is one that is seen as being accessible to someone who doesn't have a lot of experience with board games. And personally, I think that is where we run into trouble. The word gateway game becomes interchangeable with an accessible game. And just because a game is more accessible to a larger audience doesn't mean that it's necessarily it diminishes the game's quality. The term gateway game suggests that there is a portal to go through. It is your entrance into the hobby. And it might very well be a lot of people's entrance into the hobby, but it also suggests that it's the start of a path to something bigger and greater. And I was looking at a lot of the games that I get a chance to play, and a lot of them are gateway games, mostly like you, Lucas, because of the amount of time I have and the groups that I have available to play with. These gateway games are what hit the table most often, and I do enjoy playing them. I love digging into a bigger, meatier game as well, sure, but I don't feel like I'm missing out by playing these gateway games as often. So I think that the terminology here, a change in terminology may actually benefit the hobby. Changing from gateway game to thinking about these as just games with greater accessibility, accessible games. And that change of nomenclature for it, that change of terminology may be the first step in changing the point of view about these games from being something to start with, but then leave and move on to something greater, to just games that are available to a broader audience, potentially. The other part of this that I was thinking about was that the term gateway game and moving on from that to bigger and greater games assumes that the players' tastes are going to evolve and change over time. Oh, I have now mastered the gateway game and I understand the starting points of worker placement, so now I'll go on to worker placement proper and I'll play some hardcore capstone Euro games and all will be well with the world. I don't think it works that way. I was thinking about the games that I like and I've played, and the games and genres that I have discovered, like social deduction games. Social media is kind of a game in and of itself, I suppose, but I meant social deduction games. Social deduction games are a new one, and worker placement, heavier Euros that I've played, a lot of role-playing games and stuff like that. But it's not that a gateway game unlocked the potential and showed me snippets of how these grander, larger, more grandiose games worked. It's that in just keeping an open mind and kind of experimenting with different games, I've discovered these other games that were already something that I would have enjoyed. It may have made the learning curve easier to get into for some of these by having some examples through gateway games, but if I had just been plunked down in front of something like Kanban or something like that, a very heavy, meaty Euro game, it's not that without the gateway games experience, I would have been, oh, I don't like this. But now that I've played a gateway game, I do like this because that part of my mind has been enlightened. No, it just would have had a larger learning curve. That desire to play those types of games, discovering them and wanting to play them would always have been there. And I don't think the gateway game, the presence of playing a gateway game that touches on those different aspects of gaming changed anything. I think it just, again, made it more accessible. So the point is that I don't think gateway games open up the doors to new types of games that we wouldn't have liked otherwise. I think that they just show us a little more that's what's out there. And if you don't like those different mechanisms in a gateway game, you're not going to like them in a normal game, a hardcore devoted game of that genre anyway. It's not like it's not going to make you like them, and vice versa. So that's just my points of view on it. Let's turn now and get some more little points from the people in the chat with Kabuki Kid, who says, gateway games need to be fun for all, not just for newbies. I think gateway games also have to be fun and interesting enough for seasoned gamers. Personally, I still enjoy a lot of games that are considered gateways, like Ticket to Ride. Okay, so that makes sense, I guess, because the way that quote-unquote gateway games are kind of seen by people, with experience in modern board gaming, is they are seen as a lot of games that will introduce new gamers to the hobby. So yeah, if a gateway game is not meaty enough, doesn't have enough depth, then yeah, you're going to lose half your audience. And more importantly than that, I agree with you, Kabuki, because again, for people like me and Lucas, who actually find themselves playing gateway games due to time or people restrictions, or simply because they enjoy that level of games lots of times, that's what they're looking for. There's no reason why a gateway game has to be dumbed down or made less intriguing, less deep than the normal games. You can have a very simple game that is still a gateway game, but still very, very engaging. So I want to get away from this concept that a gateway game is watered down or dumbed down for a certain audience. And Kabuki, your comment helps to reinforce that. Gazencha joins us to say, I'm not a fan of the term gateway game. It simultaneously makes games sound like illicit drugs, like sounding elitist. If it's playable by anyone, it's not a real game. I prefer family weight. Family weight, that's another good way to put it. Accessible games or family weight games. I agree. I think the more I have been thinking about it in preparation for this episode, the less I like the term gateway game. So family weight makes sense as well. I don't think it's derogatory. I think it does do a really good job of describing the level of accessibility for those. So Gazencha, I agree that might also be a better terminology to use. Christian joins us to say, I like a gateway game just as much as I do the heavier ones. My original gateway was 40K, Talisman, and TI2, Twilight Imperium 2nd Edition, so it's not that I don't like heavy games. That's a good point as well, Christian, that since everyone is different, everyone will have a different level of accessibility. So what is a heavy, hardcore, meaty game to one person might be another person's gateway game. So the whole concept of a gateway game is in and of itself a bit of an illusion. That illusion perhaps can be something that is more of a hindrance to people entering the hobby sometimes if we think I must introduce this person using a gateway game rather than finding out what kind of game would this guy like. Oh, Twilight Imperium? Rock on. Let's play. Let's have that hit the table, and that's going to be your introduction to modern gaming. Demo Weasel scurries in to say that there's always the danger that games that seasoned players classify as gateway games are too complex and intimidating to new players. Well, that is almost the kind of flip side of the coin as to what Christian just said, in that he's talking about how, for him, the heavier games were his gateways. But again, Demo Weasel, you're taking the opposite side of the coin here, but I think you guys are actually making the same argument in that whether it's too simple or too complex, just pulling a game off that's categorized as a gateway game and saying, oh yeah, this is a gateway game, this will work, that's probably not as good of an approach to introducing new gamers as just trying to find out what kind of games do you enjoy, what's your level, and actually finding out what that, what's going to be the most appropriate game to introduce that player to, whether it's something heavy or something even lighter than what's considered a gateway game. Let's go along to Eric's comment, which is, I agree that quote-unquote family weight would be a good term, but that brings on the connotations of family in gaming that has its own issues. And Eric, I think I'm going to try and continue your thought here in that I think that where you're going with this, correct me if I'm wrong, is that family can have the connotation of for kids. Something that's a family show on Netflix or something usually means, the lowest common denominator is going to be for kids. And that's a good point. That can have that stigma associated with it. The other thing that we discussed already this episode was the term accessible. But of course, every term will have its own connotations, its own stigmas associated with it. So maybe family weight is still a good enough example, a term to use. Maybe there is something better. Let's continue the discussion to see if anything else comes up. Christian mentions, the game we play the most at my home is Star Realms, Dice Forge, etc. So we really enjoy gateways. And again, yes, I think that gateways, another term, actually, you just made me think of this, Christian. Your comment just made me think of this. Another term, perhaps, is evergreen games. But I don't think that quite fits here, because evergreen is one that just perpetually continues finding a new audience and selling. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with its accessibility or its weight. So perhaps evergreen games is not cohesive to this discussion. But you made me think, maybe there is another term that we can use. Let's find out together. Gazuncha says, my husband's first modern game was Twilight Struggle, so it also implies a trajectory that doesn't always happen. In my defense, he'd introduced me to an Avalon Hill sports simulation that day. So yeah, Twilight Struggle there, and Twilight Struggle is a game that has stood the test of time. While Twilight Struggle may be what's considered a heavier game, the strength of its gameplay and its design that it has held up and has been so highly regarded and reviewed, years and years later, and has stood the test of time, might be a testament to what actually makes a good gateway or accessible game. I wouldn't consider Twilight Struggle to be family because it is a little more in-depth and not quite as accessible for all members of the family, but maybe it is that strength of design. Maybe that is the crux of what makes a good gateway game. One that really has a good, tight, solid design that's going to stand the test of time. I don't know. Let's find out what the next person thinks. Peter has the next comment on the list here by saying, if you're using the term gateway, it means you're probably looking for more people to play with, which, and then, that means to play your more complicated games. So it comes from maybe a place of selfishness, and I'm guilty of this too. So are you saying that by labeling certain games as gateway games, it gives us an excuse to get those games to the table, even if they might not be the best fit for the person we're playing with? Like, hey, Caverna, it's a gateway game now, and you just learned to read? Let's play this gateway game. Kaplump. Yeah, if that's where you were going with this, totally see where you're coming from. And yes, simply giving something a label does not make it more accessible or change what it really is or change the audience for which it is appropriate. Let's go on to Bill, who says, the word gateway makes me think of a rule book with no more than 3 pages, which is insulting. It implies that a person can't handle complicated rules. No game is too complicated if it's explained well. Yeah, that goes, I think, right along to the stereotype we have for gateway games. No more than 3 pages. Oh, this is going to be simple. Oh, this is not going to be very in-depth. One of my favorite examples of a quote-unquote gateway game that I like is Forbidden Island, because it is, I think, very easy to learn and it's very accessible. But every time it's introduced to new people, they get a few turns into it and they realize, wait a minute, this is going to really be a challenge and we need to stop and work together and really work together to solve this problem. And the table goes from chatter to focusing in on the game. And it's amazing to see. And that's why Forbidden Island is a game that I enjoy so much, because even playing it over and over again, it continues to be a challenge every time and a really good introduction game to people. I think its rulebook is more than 3 pages, but it's easy to explain the concepts, and it's something that after you get those initial concepts, after a 5-minute introduction, you can play it over and over and over again for hours and it holds up, which I think is a definitive quote-unquote gateway game. What you're really looking for in a gateway game, that level of accessibility and replayability. Let's get 2 more comments here. This one from Matthew Jude, who takes the time to join us and say that gateways get mixed up with easy, which gets mixed up with bad. That doesn't have to be true. Gateway is completely subjective. That right there in a nutshell is so clearly and concisely just communicates the thesis point that I wanted to make here. So thank you, Matthew, for putting that into such elegant language. I appreciate that. I think you hit the nail right on the head there. So thank you for contributing that comment. We're gonna take one more comment so that Matthew's wasn't the dead last comment on the list here. This one comes from James, who says, is there just one gateway game that would cover all the bases and show someone some, if not all, of the mechanics to move them to middleweight games? Is there one game that can do it all? Well, James, I don't know. And actually, let me take that a bit further. Can't think of one off the top of my head that there is, but also I don't think that a game should aspire to do that. I think a game should focus on doing what it does really well, instead of trying to do everything for everyone. I think that would dilute the game and hurt it. A case in point, unfortunately, would be 504. This game is an amazing game from a kind of design aspect, from an artistic aspect. Gameplay-wise, though, it hasn't got a lot of love because it tries to do everything. It tries to have the possibility of doing everything. And I think that as a result made it a weaker game in terms of gameplay and longevity. So James, I don't know. That might be a challenge for everyone who's watching. Can you think of a gateway level game, quote unquote gateway level game, that actually covers all the bases, that could show someone all the mechanisms that are available out there to move them on to quote-unquote middleweight games? Is there one out there? If so, let me know in the comments below, or over on the Pair of Dice Paradise Facebook or Twitter pages, where you're welcome to continue the conversations as well. In the meantime, I want to say that episodes like this have been made possible by viewers like you who have been supporting Pair of Dice Paradise's fundraisers. Thank you very much, everyone, for your support. It really does make a difference, and it's really appreciated. But that's it for this time. Until next time, I've been Chaz Marler, who, along with the live streaming YouTube chat, have been serving up some table scraps. Thanks. I'll talk to you again soon. I can't chat today, apparently. Let me do one more thing of reading your question, because if there's anything worth doing, it's worth doing 3 times. And then I will go and splice in my awesome response, and we'll all go, that was such clean editing, we didn't even notice you spliced it together. And all of us who were here in the chat, we'll be like, yeah, that's right.